This is The Weekly Set, an official podcast of TheTotalScreen.com.
I wish I was the monster you think I am.
You have come here to beseech me?
Can't ask for your soul.
Madness can be a medicine for the modern world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Weekly Set, the official podcast of The Total Screen. I am your host. My name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at The Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So, today, it is May 11th, as we are recording this podcast. It is episode 254, and we are going to be talking about Season 5 of Lost as part of our epic rewatch. Now that we've finished Season 5, we got one season left. We've already started watching the episodes, and we're getting into that now. And, in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing our season 6 podcast, and then we'll be done. We'll have officially caught up on Lost and gone through the entire series. So how are you feeling right now in your journey with season 5?
Okay, so I have mixed feelings about this season. And I feel like, this is the point where we don't hit those highs that season 4 hit. And I think with season 4, we reached the peak of Lost, and then it's kind of like, it's on a downward trajectory, and I don't think it goes back to hitting those highs again for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Certainly does it in this season. There is no The Constant for the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is an episode called The Variable, but it's not on that level. which was a clear reference to The Constant, but it's not on that level.
I think Lost starts peaking kind of at the end of its third season, like the last couple episodes of its third season. It really hits its stride, and then season 4 is just excellent, with only like a few small moments that are kind of like down moments, but most of it's like, it's pretty much all killer, no filler.
Yeah.
And then season 5 is kind of like, I think it's better than the first half of season 3, or where like season 2 was at for most of its run.
I think so too.
But it's not quite at that peak that, like, the very end of season 3 or like season 4 we're at.
My problem with the season is the first half is a total mess, and then you get to the point where they're in the 70s, and you get you get like a nice cohesive story that ends in, like, that has a good ending, but it doesn't really have much to do with anything, and it doesn't really have any real consequence to anything, really. Like, it kind of like, it's almost like this season, like, exists on its own. It's weird. I don't know.
I think that they needed a consequence for what happened in season 4.
Yeah.
So, like, the moving of the island and the kind of like the high note that season 4 left off on. I think if it had just jumped in and there weren't consequences to that, it wouldn't have been compelling anymore. It would have, like, kind of ruined it. So I think what they needed to do is they needed to, like, say, okay, because they did this, shit went wrong. Like, time's skipping off on a record. It's like a skipping record, as they made the analogy for. It's all messed up. People are gonna die because of this. They're struggling. Even when they get out of that, they're stuck in the 70s, and then the other group is stuck there, and their lives are kind of falling apart. And it's kind of like, the whole idea is that, like, they couldn't make it, like, easy. Like, they couldn't have jumped into kind of the events towards the end of the season or into, like, the final season stuff without first saying, okay, they have to work through this shit that they caused.
Yeah, I understand that. Unfortunately, it's just not well executed. I mean, the solution to the island skipping around is really for Locke to go back to the Orchid and just, like, push the wheel again. So it stops skipping as soon as Locke pushes the wheel again. Like,
yeah, but then it doesn't, the consequences don't end there. I mean,
it doesn't end there because they get stuck in the wrong spot of time due to like where they happen to be when Locke ended the island jumping through time. Like, but to get the island to stop moving, like, that was literally all it took. But they make, like, a big deal, like, everybody has to come back to the island to, like, save the people on it. It's like, well, when Jack, Kate, and, Hurley and Saeed and, get back to, like, the 70s, like, nobody's really in danger. Like nobody's in danger of dying anytime soon. Like Sawyer and Juliet and them have managed to make a comfortable life for themselves.
Yeah,
as part of the Dharma Initiative.
Yeah,
and
I
Sawyer
can see
says
that. They kind of took out the bite a bit.
Yeah, that took out the bite. And Sawyer even says multiple times to them during the season, like, I was happy till you guys came back.
Yeah, I had a life here.
Yeah, I had a life here to like underscore, like so in a way, like they didn't have to come back for any reason.
See, I think that all works because what Lost is like really about, and it's kind of hammered in home at the end when people got all upset with, you know, the way it deviated from answering mysteries and focused more on the character drama. It is more about the character drama, and it's about the idea that these characters are lost and that and I think it's interesting to have Sawyer, one of the most lost characters on the show, like find a level of contentment. And it's not that he was completely safe and could have continued out his content life all the time, because he couldn't have, because it's
well, yeah, we knew
the whole Dharma Initiative was going to be killed, you know?
Yeah, we knew that they were doomed. So
there was a ticking clock above their heads, but he'd managed to kind of deceive himself into thinking like, I'm good here, this is fine. I don't have the modern amenities, I have to live under a false name, but I'm fine with that. And I think they did an interesting parallel to that with Juliet, who was comfortable in that world with him and who had that relationship with him, but the whole time was like, as soon as they came back, she was like, yeah, I need to get you off the island now. And he's like, why? I'm fine. And basically her mentality is like, no, you're not. You've convinced yourself that you're okay here, but you're really not.
Mm-hmm.
You're out of place, you're out of time, you're never going to be fully satisfied. There's always going to be a lingering regret in you unless you get yourself back to where you belong and stuff. And she kind of realized that when he didn't, you know? And I think that made it interesting. I think if you didn't have both sides of that, it wouldn't be as interesting.
Right.
And I think everybody else is just along for the ride. Well, that wasn't necessarily interesting for Jen or Miles or anything. It's, you know, except for Jen learning English, you know?
Yeah, Jen learns English. Like Miles is just there, but they do some interesting stuff with Miles and his backstory this season, which I appreciated.
Yeah. I'm just saying the whole thing hangs on Sawyer and Juliet.
Yeah, because like Jack comes back to the island in the 70s, and immediately he goes from being depressed and angry Jack to just asshole Jack. So we get asshole Jack, and he basically hangs back and does nothing for like the vast majority of the season until like the very end of the season when he decides based on nothing that he's just going to take up Faraday's crusade.
I'd say less asshole Jack. I think that's more like season 6. I'd say more he's like, Jesus take the wheel Jack.
Jesus take the wheel Jack, yeah. I call him asshole Jack especially because like when Saeed like shoots Ben and like Kate is begging him to do it and Jack is just like, no, fuck them kids.
I think it's less like fuck the kid though at that point. It's more like, oh no, this is just supposed to happen. I'm letting Jesus take the wheel now. Jesus hasn't told me to do anything, so clearly everything's fine, you know? Like, it's just that kind of mentality he took on, you know?
You know what? I could see that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's less asshole Jack than Jesus take the wheel Jack. Although, I wonder if letting Jesus take the wheel just makes Jack an asshole.
Well, it definitely led to asshole Jack. Once you get into like season 6.
Yeah, once you get into season 6, yeah.
The direct result of Jesus take the wheel Jack is asshole Jack.
But
at least it's better than getting a tattoo in an Asian country, Jack.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. Or playing football with the others, Jack.
Yeah.
But it was bizarre how like in the background, like Jack was like Jack is like important for like the first half of the season and then like the very end, but like for the entire middle stretch when he gets back to the island, he basically does nothing.
Yeah.
And it's so weird because for like a character who like thus far in the show took like center stage in almost everything, so like just melt into the background all of a sudden was kind of like bizarre.
That's because they gave the leadership position to Sawyer. Sawyer.
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
without him having a leadership position, that's what he is. He's just like a background performer if he's not the leader. And so like I think we needed that because we needed that contrast to show that like, yes, Sawyer was kind of deluding himself into like accepting something that wasn't the end game. But like he ran things in its time better than Jack did. He wasn't impulsive. He plotted more. He took less chances, things like that. And so in turn, we got like their home island life was a little bit on the boring side, didn't have a real bite to it. But that was just like showing the effectiveness of Sawyer's way.
Right.
And then how everything kind of complicates and fucks that up. In one way, you could say like, oh, they came back and they just ruined everything he had. And so everyone's, he's worse off because they arrived and shit. But it's more like they broke the spell that he had put himself under. And yes, he was a better leader in that position, but he had also deluded himself into thinking that he could, just be okay just living there when he knew that they were all going to die and it was pointless,
I think Hurley even points out Hurley is like, dude, everybody here's going to die, right?
Yeah.
Because Hurley saw the mass grave, but like, I don't, another thing, like I liked the concept of like the time travel storyline because I like the concept of like, if our characters are now living with the Dharma Initiative, then maybe we'll learn more about them and how they operated, what their goals were. We don't really learn anything new about the Dharma Initiative that the show hadn't already told us.
It's still kind of frustratingly vague.
yeah, it's still frustratingly vague. Even though like we have our characters now like living with them, we don't get any new information.
But we all know people like that, right? It's just here we have a whole collective of them. But like I know people, like I have friends that like are like that. They're like weirdly vague about their lives and shit. And it's like, dude, just say what's going on. Don't try to be like a man of mystery or something. It's like, and I think we all know people like that. It's just here we have a whole collective of them.
Right. But my bigger point is like, it doesn't do anything to advance the lore. Yeah, which is kind of disappointing.
It does because a little bit like on the other side.
They had like a good opportunity to do that, and they kind of didn't.
It does a little bit with certain things, like, it places artifacts, like the atomic bomb. And, with the time travel, it introduces us to, oh, there's an atomic bomb on the island. It's buried. Where is it buried? Oh, it's buried here. It's like this whole kind of like, so it kind of places some artifacts and stuff, which I thought was kind of interesting. So I like that aspect of it. But yeah, I get what you kind of mean. They took the bite out of a lot of it, and they didn't really build as much on the lore as they could have. Like it would have been a good opportunity to give a lot of like answers. Like the polar bear answer is obvious. Like they brought polar bears to the island, and there's electromagnetic stuff going on the island. So yeah, polar bears make sense as something you bring there to study that, because of the way they're tuned to magnetic poles,
Yeah.
And they answer that in like the little epilogue special that happens after the whole series. They kind of answer that more directly because some people still wanted to know the answer to it, so they just threw it in there. But like they could have like brought in like when they brought the polar bears there and like why that was a weird thing. And they could have like done things like that to kind of show, like, we see that they're building the Swan Station in the course of the thing, and they're trying to keep it secret from the others and all this kind of stuff like that. So we get asked like little bits like that, but there's a lot more they could have done along those lines. Like, why was this station exist? And why did this happen here? Why did they make a video saying that this station's to observe that one? Like, they could have given us little sly answers to that by showing as they were building those things or as they were doing those things. And it could have been interesting, but they didn't really do that.
Right. They didn't really do that. Same thing with the others. We didn't get any more answers about the others or where they came from, what their position on the island is. Season 6, I guess, is supposed to be the season that provides those answers. Although so far it's still like foggy.
Some people think season 6 provided too many answers.
Yeah.
Through the whole run of Lost, Lindelof used to refer to the midichlorian problem, which was basically in Star Wars with the prequels when they said, "Oh, the Force, it's midichlorians." It's like it ruined the mystery,
Right.
It's like, oh, you just took something that was cool and didn't need to be answered, and you answered it. And so he'd always raise that as like the opposite of his style, which was he was like, yeah, I might leave certain things unanswered, but I don't cause the midichlorian problem.
I get that. My thing is like, I think there's certain things like that needs, the Force didn't need context. They didn't need an answer for why it existed. It's kind of like, it was magic. You know, you take it on faith. Like, we are, as consumers of, you know, like, entertainment, we are kind of conditioned now to, like, take magic at face value.
Yeah.
Right?
We have a shorthand.
We have a shorthand. So the Force was not something that needed a scientific explanation. But I think the others needed some context for, you know, why they were there and what they were all about, you know?
Some of that, yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that there's an episode in season 6 that's one of the most hated episodes of Lost. And we're not going to discuss it because, you know, if anybody's watching along with us that hasn't seen it, we don't want to spoil the show.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil the show.
All I'm going to say about it is the episode's called Across the Sea, I believe. And what I'm saying about it is that for all Lindelof's talk of like not wanting to cause the midichlorian problem, that was the midichlorian problem for Lost, that episode. There was a few answers that didn't need to be answered that were answered in that episode, you know? So, like, there's other answers that we did need answers for, and some of the answers in the episode were neat, you know? But other ones were like, okay, this is too much information. You demystified a lot of the show, you know?
Right.
So, I'm just saying, like, there's a balance that is very hard probably for them to maintain in the course of the show about what to answer and what not to answer. And sometimes they nail it, and sometimes they don't answer enough, and sometimes they answer too much. I don't think it ever gets as bad as the midichlorian problem, but
right, exactly. So the key things I loved from the season were I did love the concept of them going back to 1979 and living among the Dharma Initiative and kind of seeing how, you know, seeing the characters in that perspective. I thought that was fun. The time travel stuff was fun. The character drama was as good as always, of course. I loved it. It's just, so if you took like, I want to throw out the first half of the season, the stuff with like, you know, like them trying to get like everybody back on the island. I thought that was a mess because like nobody could like explain why they were doing that except it was supposedly to save everybody else who did not need saving from them coming. I
remember that was kind of all solved really in like 2 episodes, and I remember not really being that much of a fan of those 2 episodes.
Which episodes
when they got back? Again? I'm talking about when they got back to the island, like when they met up with Eloise Hawking, and from that point where they met up with Eloise Hawking till they got back on the island, like that stretch, those like 2 episodes or whatever.
Yeah,
I kind of had some issues.
It was kind of rushed because like, you know, Hurley gets himself arrested, you know, right before then. Ben is more successful at getting people together than like Locke was, but Ben is ultimately not very successful because he manages to he manages to only get like Jack and Son, and you know, at the end, you know, to Eloise Hawking, it's like, it's not a major success on Ben's part, but then like,
and he got a Hot Pocket thrown at him.
Hot Pocket. But then like,
the greatest scenes in Lost.
yeah, he got a Hot Pocket thrown at him. but then like, even though like Ben only manages to get like Son and Jack to Eloise, like magically everything else comes together where everybody else like is on that plane rapidly, and like, you know, the rest of the 2 episodes, like Hurley is magically released from prison, you know, and like fucking like Saeed is like captured by this bounty hunter, you know.
Kate
and, like,
just kind of shows up in the middle of the night for Jack.
Yeah, Kate just shows up. It's like, what the? Yeah, like that's a bit rushed.
There are a few cool bits in there. I like when you know, Lapidus comes out and he's like, looks around and he's like, oh, Jack, what are you doing on here? And then he looks around and sees Saeed and Hurley. He's like, we're not going to Tahiti or wherever, are we?
Yeah. We're not going to where we're supposed to be going, are we? Yeah. I love Lapidus. He's just great. Yeah. I also love the fact that, like, even though, like, the plane was supposed to, like, have the same fate as Oceanic 815, you know, like, I love the fact that they underscore how good of a pilot Lapidus is by having him actually land the plane, you know, without it breaking in half. Like, because they made a point of that, or, you know, in season 4, where like
when they said like, where'd the helicopter crash, and he's like, what kind of pilot do you think I am?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was there are good things like that throughout the season. Like, I know that there were parts that you're talking about that you didn't like as much. I like the turn to hard sci-fi. I like the whole time skipping thing. I like the implications of that with like Charlotte dying. I liked the whole bit where like, you know, Jack was down the well and then the time skip happened and like the well was like just sealed. It was just dirt with a rope sticking out of it.
You mean Locke? I think you said
Locke, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the conceits
Locke
of all
broke
that.
his leg down in the well.
That was brutal.
Yeah. I like that stuff. It's just on its own. It doesn't connect to the previous season or like the season that comes after, you know, like narratively. Like, so it doesn't advance the overall narrative of the series too much. Like, so it feels like, so it's like narratively, it's like everybody's in a holding pattern until we can get to like the events of season 6. But like conceptually, I like it. The only thing I really hate from both a narrative and a conceptual is the whole, we gotta go back to the island, like trying to gather everybody up and get them back to the island for some nebulous reason that doesn't, and like I said, that ends up being rushed at the end as if like they got really bored with that storyline and just really just want to get to Jack and them being in the 70s.
Yeah, that was my issue with it.
Yeah.
Like I felt like they could have made that a little bit more fluid.
Yeah.
That transition into there. And then, you know, it's like in some ways they took too long to get into the actual gathering everybody to get back to the island. And then once they got there, it's like they got there too early because there was too much time spent in the 70s. You know, like, so it's like they needed to kind of like stretch out that adventure kind of in the middle a little bit better. But
yeah, I just think the whole idea of them leaving the island and having to come back could have been scrapped completely, because you could have still had the time skipping and everything happen with everybody on the island.
But leaving the island was season 4, so it's like they had to.
I know,
so season 5 had to get them back.
Yeah, I feel like they wrote themselves into a corner with the idea of the flash forwards. I think the flash forwards really created this problem where they committed to these characters are supposed to be off the island at some point, so we gotta get them off the island, but really we want them to be on the island for the rest of our story. So we can't really do that, but we're committed now.
I think they needed a time skip in there, and I think this is the only way to make it really work.
Yeah.
And like I said, they needed consequences, because season 4 was all about big things happening. And then those big things would have felt really cheap in retrospect if they didn't have heavy consequences for them.
Oh, right.
So
sure.
I think season, like, I don't see season 5 as being unnecessary. I see it's like...
I came out of season 4 thinking that the big consequences were going to be the struggle between Ben Linus and Charles Widmore, as like Widmore being the former leader of the others, being exiled from the island and trying to find a way back to it, and like Ben basically doing everything he can to keep Widmore off of the island and to maintain his status, you know?
Yeah, they really didn't do that much with that storyline.
Yeah, they didn't, and I thought that was going to be like the main driving conflict of season 5, because it seemed like season 4 was building to that as being like the main conflict.
I think they might have also introduced Jacob a little bit too late in the season.
I think
like
so.
He maybe should have come in earlier in the season and kind of crept in as like an unknown figure until he was revealed as Jacob.
We should have seen Jacob sooner. Like, he starts showing up. He shows up in the second to last episode.
Yeah. Well, part of the 2-part finale, you know?
Yeah, it's part of the 2-part finale. He starts showing up, and I feel like if he just had randomly showed up and like characters flash, like if they peppered that through the season, hell, if they peppered like Jacob flashbacks throughout the entire series, it would have been more meaningful.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, I think it would have been more interesting if they had been able to do that, but I mean, that would have required them making a good casting pick for the character like way back.
Yeah, they would have had to. They would have had to have known that they were going to do that.
But through the season, I mean, they could have at least done it like maybe halfway through the season.
Yeah, they could have introduced Jacob earlier in the season and peppered his appearances throughout the season at least to make it more impactful, instead of just like, oh, all of a sudden in the finale, here's Jacob. It leads to like the feeling of like things being rushed, right?
A bit, yeah. It's kind of, yeah. That's always, and that's the tricky balance, because they wanted a short run so that they could do it, and there's times in which it feels like it's rushed, and there's times in which it feels like it's taking too long. So it's like, it's about finding that balance somewhere in between. And sometimes I think they did pretty good, and sometimes not so hot, you know?
But yeah, like, taken on its own. The stuff that happens on the island with the time skipping and then with like being in the Dharma in the 70s, I love. Everything else I don't love so much. I will say the one storyline that was important in this season and was impactful is the storyline that happens between Ben and Locke. That is the most interesting thing about the season to me, is that relationship. Because we do see like Ben
and Locke in quotation marks.
Yeah. Well, we do get some actual Ben and Locke in there because Ben murders Locke, at the beginning of the season,
That happened, I thought that happened at the end of the last season.
No, I'm pretty sure it happened at the beginning of this season because this season, it happened this season because this season was the episode where they had the life and death of Jeremy Bentham, where not Locke.
That's right.
Where we reveal like Locke's alive on the island, right? Like we get that surprise, and then basically it goes into the entire backstory of like Locke's trip off the island to try and convince everybody to come back, and then how Ben murders him.
So last season, I remember it ended with the reveal that Locke was the man in the coffin, that he was Jeremy Bentham.
Yes.
And then this season, we actually got the backstory about how that came about and stuff. I thought his backstory is kind of good. There were a few things I kind of took a little issue with. Abaddon was taken out pretty quickly for somebody that was kind of an interesting character.
Yeah.
And then he just kind of became uninteresting very quickly, and then they killed him off.
Yeah, that was a shame.
Once they made him Locke's like chauffeur, he started becoming uninteresting, and then they killed him. Yeah, it was kind of like they could have done a lot more with such a mysterious character,
And then Ben kills him.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because like that relationship, which it does take on a different role when Locke is resurrected on the island, supposedly.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think we get the reveal about Locke in this season, so I won't talk about it.
We do.
It's at the end. It's at the incident part 2, right?
Yeah, because the incident part 2 ends with them killing Jacob.
Oh, that's right.
So we don't get the reveal of who Locke is, but we saw that there's 2 Lockes. That there's the one that's in the room, and then that sandal on the foot or whatever.
In the foot.
That statue with Ben, and then there's the one in the casket that never left the casket.
Yeah, we get the Locke reveal at the very end of the season.
Yeah.
It's like the stinger.
We don't get the exact reveal of who exactly he is, who he actually is, but we get the reveal that he's not who we think he is. Actually, no, we do get the reveal of who he is, just not, I guess, what he is yet. We get who, but not what. Because they showed the scene where a man in black approaches Jacob on the beach. Yes. And he says, one of these days I'm going to find a loophole and then I'm going to kill you. And then Jacob addresses Locke by saying, it looks like you found your loophole.
Yeah.
So we know that. We know who he is, but we don't know what he is.
Well, yeah, we don't know what he is. We don't know what he is. We don't know why he is. We don't really know anything about this.
Well, of course we do, but in the context of the rewatch, we don't.
in the context of the rewatch. But watching this for the first time, knowing like he's the character at the beginning, we don't know what that character's all about.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know that yet in the context of the rewatch. But like, you take that out, of course we know. We're not saying that. For anybody listening, we're not like going like, oh, we watched this whole series and we have no idea what this is about.
We only know like he's a seemingly immortal character like Jacob who wants Jacob dead for reasons.
Yeah.
Like that's all we know.
Yeah.
And
Jacob's presented in white and he's presented in black, so they're doing the whole like the whole board game thing again,
right?
The backgammon.
Exactly. But when I say so this is the major through line to season 6, more than anything else, because it's this character who Locke's become, this man in black, that is the major antagonist going forward, and Ben's relationship to this character, which becomes complicated, is probably the most impactful thing of the season.
Yeah, definitely. See, I liked the season because I liked the shift towards hard sci-fi. Yeah. I do think there were things that were a little bit not as satisfying as they should have been. A few things that kind of dragged, and a few things that were rushed, like I've mentioned throughout our discussion.
I talked about like Juliet just being completely stupid and out of character towards the end of the season for no reason. I was like, what the hell? Did Juliet like take shrooms at the end of the season? Like, because she's like, there with Sawyer and Kate, ready to stop Jack from blowing up the island, and then like Sawyer goes off with Jack to like beat on him, and then he comes out and Juliet stops him. And it's like, no, we're going to blow up the island now. I just changed my mind from 5 seconds ago. And then he's like, why? And she's like, oh, because it's better if I never met you because then you won't leave me for Kate. And I'm like, what the fuck? Is this Juliet?
I think her reasoning, I actually liked her reasoning because I don't think it was that simple. I think it was more just that, like I said earlier, why
was she so insecure all of a sudden?
I don't think that was it. I think that we didn't see the full depth of her relationship with Sawyer. And I think that what was referenced was that Sawyer was kind of fooling himself into thinking that he could be content living in Dharmaville and doing that, and for that point on, to the point in which that he just completely has put blinders on about the fact that everyone's gonna die, including him if he's there,
Right.
And just kind of completely put blinders on about that whole thing. And as I mentioned, Juliet is kind of seeing the truth of what's going on with him. She sees that he's putting on blinders. She's staying with him because she's enjoying their time together and she cares about him and she loves him, but she knows that he's not fully committed to her, and she knows that he's going to feel regret if he doesn't play out what he needs to play out in his role in the story, she recognizes that even though he's kind of put on blinders and pretended he doesn't recognize it. So I get that. I get her reasoning. The one thing where I'll completely agree with you on though is that she was kind of flip-floppy about how that works, oh, now I'm gonna, try to stop Jack, now I'm gonna help Jack. They kind of made that wish-washy for the sole purpose of a change of direction in the story.
Yeah, to facilitate where they wanted to go in the story, I thought. And I thought, from her perspective, Jack is gonna blow up the island and kill everybody on it. So really she decides in a split second that she would rather die than lose Sawyer and everybody else.
See, I don't think it's a decision that she made thinking about herself though. It wasn't I can't live without Sawyer. It was more like, oh, I love Sawyer so much that I need him to get to where he needs to be. So I think it was less about herself and more about him. I think it was kind of selfless in that sense. I think that's where she was coming from. And Sawyer was kind of coming from a place of delusion. And I think the issue for me was that she was wish-washy about her direction,
Yeah, she was incredibly wishy-washy at the end, which kind of comes out of nowhere. Again, maybe it's it's that thing where they were rushing things again, I don't know.
Might be the second saddest death in the season though, or in the series.
It really is. I mean,
probably behind Charlie.
I'm kind of pissed that they killed off Juliet like that. It's they didn't need to do that. They didn't. That was not necessary. Come on.
I think they kind of did. I think they needed to get Sawyer to where he needed to be.
Yeah, well, right now Sawyer's being insufferably angry, and he's,
Yeah, but I think he needs to be there for the direction of the show to go where it's going to go.
Yeah.
I think he needs to work through that. I think that's important to his character arc, that he needs to work through that. And I think that had to happen in order for that to kick off for him. He had to get angry before he could get calm. You know what I mean?
Right. But I'm still going to be angry, just like Sawyer.
I like Julia, and I like it, but she also had a really sad death scene that was very emotional,
Yeah,
so,
it was.
And that's the most you can hope for. It would be cool if Charlie was still around, but his death scene was great, and I wouldn't trade it.
How about that ending? She sets off the bomb, and then it goes to a white screen with the Lost logo.
Do you remember the first time you watched that episode, and how that would just make your imagination race about what that means? Because almost every other season ended with a little tag right before the very end that kind of said setting up something else that's going to happen. And this just ended straight up white flash, no idea.
Yeah, no idea. Well, there were two possibilities, right? The two possibilities that were presented to you were the bomb goes off and everybody dies. Jack is wrong, everybody's dead. Or the bomb goes off and Faraday was right, it resets the timeline, because everybody dies, but since these people get born in the future, they're not dead in the timeline, so the timeline continues on, but the plane doesn't crash.
Well, and see, here's the thing. This should have been the first clue for a lot of people that were upset about the MacGuffin of season 6. Lost presented you with 2 options. That doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen.
Right.
In fact, the very fact that Lost presented you with 2 options should have made you go, okay, so what's the third?
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's not going to be the first 2, because they already presented those. So, yeah.
But yeah, in the first 2 options, everybody still dies, either way. But, but it's kind of like, but it's amazing because like, we're rewatching this, we have the luxury of just going, click, next episode. But back when that first aired, you had to sit on that white screen for an entire year.
Oh yeah, I think it came back in either January or February, and that season finale aired in like, May, so that's, like what, 9 months? 8 months? 9 months? Something
Yeah,
like
about
that?
9 months, yeah. That's a excruciating long time to find out what happens from, that bomb going off, you know?
Yeah.
That's gotta be like the biggest cliffhanger. Could you imagine if the show was canceled after that? If they never did season 6, it just ended there? Could you imagine?
You would just have to assume they all died, and that was it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you would have to just assume that. But yeah.
It's kind of like the ending to season 3 of Hannibal. If you cut out that little tag at the end, you know?
Yeah, if you cut out that tag at the
just
end,
assume that they died, you know?
You assume that they died at that point, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, season 5, I give it a B, you know? It's Lost, yeah.
I give it 9 Hot Pockets out of 10.
Lost, it's not going to get as good as season 4 again. You know, I think the iconic moments of the show that everybody loves to reference, you know, like, Not Penny's Boat, the stuff about, you know, the Constant.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of like the key iconic moments are behind us now. There's not a lot of stuff coming up that people love to reference, unfortunately.
There's some stuff. There's a few interesting bits and stuff in there that I think are kind of cool that we have coming up. There's one storyline that I didn't care much about earlier in the series, and then that kind of disappeared and they brought back in season 6. I won't really reference it. I was kind of like, and it kind of, I think pretty much peters out for the most part anyway, so.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm watching the show now and it's kind of stupid. Like, why is this a thing?
It's tricky though. It's tricky to talk about Lost because there's so many different ways in which you evaluate the series. So obviously there's the balance of like mythos and, character story. But then on top of that, you also have the sheer ambition of that project as a network show in that era. You know?
It's hugely
Any
ambitious.
show in that era, but specifically a network show in that era.
Oh yeah.
Like the shot in the arm that show gave to serialized television is like still something that's ongoing, you know?
Well,
like that's a huge effect. And, the character drama moments are so good, so much better than most of what you get on like network TV.
Oh yeah. The character drama is why you could stick through even like the most moronic plot lines that pop up. It's because the character drama remains and it remains consistent too. I mean, I won't say like it's always like at the top tier, but like the characters are consistent, you know, like in the character drama remains consistent and it doesn't ever veer too far into soap opera territory, which I like, you know, like nobody acts irrationally, though I will say like there is a huge problem with communication in this show. Like people don't know how to clearly communicate. Other than that, I mean, it's gravy.
Yeah. There's so many different levels because when you look back on the show, there's areas where the show is clearly dated. Like, you know, a lot of the special effects, you know?
Yeah.
Some of the special effects you don't even notice. Like there's parts where they add in more hills and mountains and stuff that nobody notices, and that's special effects. But then a lot of the other stuff, like when you see submarines coming in and out of the water, it's kind of bad. It's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's kind of bad. It's just
But
bad.
then you have to remind yourself that this is pre-Game of Thrones network television.
This is network television in like 2005?
And like I said, it's both network TV and pre-Game of Thrones.
Yeah, with 2005 CG technology.
Yeah.
with like, a network budget,
network budget and time frame. Yeah. So there's things like that. But on top of just like the technical issues like that, there's also some areas where it's dated in its structure. Mm-hmm. And then there's some areas where it's still kind of ahead of its time in its structure. So like it's got both at the same time. And that's because like when you think about the things that are like ahead of its time or that are like current that we have now, like they go like, oh, serialized storytelling is better now because of this or that or whatever. It's like almost all of that is owed to Lost. So it's like Lost kind of broke television out of what it was and turned it into what it is now. I think it's one of the major players in doing that. Of course, there's other ones that predate Lost that had a part in that too. Sopranos, X-Files, things like that.
You can't deny Lost's impact, especially like we've talked about before, like the rush to find like the rush that it came immediately after for like people to make like Lost clones, you know?
We're getting that now with Game of Thrones, aren't we? Like all these, the next Game of Thrones shows.
Yeah, exactly. Like a bunch of fantasy shows were greenlit in the wake of Game of Thrones success. It's like as soon as like Lost like finished airing, like people were like networks were greenlighting like these mystery box shows left and right, you know?
Yeah, most of them very bad.
Yeah, most of them very, very bad. Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting though because like I said, it's Lost helped change TV. So there's things in it that feel dated, but they're dated because there was no show like Lost before to change that.
I remember the one ABC was pushing, because because Lost ended and they didn't want it to end, so they created Flash Forward, yeah. And they even went so far as to make make it like in universe with Lost because they made like Oceanic Airlines like an actual thing in Flash Forward.
Yeah, and the name Flash Forward was like would have meant nothing to anybody except because of Lost.
Yeah, except to like Lost fans. It's like, but I tried watching. This show was terrible.
I think there were even some actors from Lost in it that they brought in through.
Yeah, I think so.
I think Penny was in it, wasn't she?
I think Penny was in it actually. Now that I remember,
I'm trying to remember because I believe like Harold from Harold and Kumar was in it.
Yes, he was in it. He was like one of the agents.
Yeah, and then it was like what's his name? Voldemort's brother.
Yeah.
Fiennes. Joseph Fiennes? Is that it, Joe?
Yeah, Joseph. I always thought it was like
it's
Joseph.
Rafe was Voldemort, and his brother is like Joseph, I think.
Yeah, Joseph is his brother. Yeah.
And then and Dominic was in it, wasn't he? Charlie?
Dominic Monaghan. Yeah, he was in it.
Yeah,
so Charlie was in it.
Penny, I believe, and yeah, it's just weird. That's the problem with all of those shows, and we brought this up a bunch of times, so people are probably sick of hearing us say this, but the problem with all those shows is that they dump the mystery at the very beginning.
Yeah, they dump the mystery.
Here's the mystery. And Lost was more like, here's a plane crash, and then there's some weird stuff happening, and then it eased into the mysteries, whereas this was just straight up like, here's the mystery in the first 10 minutes, here's the mystery.
Yeah, here's the mystery, so try to figure that out. And also like, the character drama was also very poor.
Oh, garbage, yeah.
Yeah, it was just garbage here. So like, these shows like, missed the mark on what made Lost special.
There was another one, I think it was on CBS called Surface, and it had Peter Dinklage in it, pre-Game of Thrones.
Oh, nice.
He was like a scientist or something.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And that was like an alien story thing or something, but it was the same, trying to do a mystery box show kind of thing and not doing it really that well. Everybody was trying to do it after Lost, and, like Lost, when you judge Lost, you have to like account for its time and account for what existed before and after it, and all that has to go into how you do it. And I always give, like, a lot of people will mark down Lost, they'll say like, it's not as perfectly written as like The Wire, so therefore The Wire is a much better show. And I'm like, yeah, but The Wire wasn't ambitious. Like, The Wire was pretty straightforward. It just was very detail oriented, and it's like, so I think ambition gets points. Like,
I would say so. Ambition does get points, but there's nothing wrong with something being like straightforward and just being very damn good at it. Like,
oh yeah.
Breaking Bad is like that, where it's pretty straightforward plot wise, but like it's damn good.
Yeah, it's elements of the execution that Breaking Bad did so well. It's not even even in the case of Breaking Bad, it's not straightforward in the execution. It's like, it's the way it played with things like consequences that were so important.
Right.
So it's like, it's that kind of stuff that made it so good. But with Lost, I think it gets a lot of points for ambition that boost it up, where like there's points where you go like, oh yeah, this isn't on the same level as like The Wire or The Sopranos because this dialogue isn't as good or because this plot line wasn't as fully realized. And it's like, yeah, but was, Sopranos or The Wire balancing like an island mythos the whole time?
Well, they were trying to take, they were trying to take like a simple boilerplate concept. These people get stranded on island and turn it into something grander.
Yeah.
Than the initial concept would suggest.
So that's what I believe. Like, I think ambition gets a lot of points in my book.
Because the concept suggests that you get Lord of the Flies with adults, but they turned it into something completely different. Here's
the other thing with Lost too, is that, and this is a good case with what we're talking about when we're talking about the problems with the season, is that regardless of the problems with the season, it's a fun show that goes by in a flash.
Right.
Like, this show moves very fast. Like, you hit the end of a 45-minute episode, which is a network hour, and you feel like you've been watching for 25 minutes.
Yeah,
like, even on a bad episode.
Some shows now, especially like hour-long drama shows, I kind of like check like the time and like the middle of them and be like, oh, there's still 30 minutes of this. Lost, I kind of like...
You get that Lost title card and you're like, fuck, it's already over.
Yeah, I get fuck, it's already... If I check the time on Lost, it's usually like, oh, it's got like 3 more minutes left. Shit, this went by fast.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I think it deserves credit for. It's a very entertaining show, and that holds up. Like, I think a lot of, like, I remember when I was going to start this rewatch, I told some people about it. I told my sister, for example, and she kind of liked Lost, but wasn't super into it. But then she was like, oh, I bet that doesn't hold up at all. And, like, that was kind of like her impression without having done a rewatch. I think it holds up magnificently.
I think it holds, yeah, I would agree with you. I think it holds up compared
it
to
holds up better than a lot of shows I've rewatched. So
yes, it does. It's like they could air it today with very little tweaking.
Yeah, maybe fix some of the special effects and
maybe fix some of the special effects. But it would not take much. It fit right in.
That's why I kind of put Lost in the same category as Twin Peaks, in the sense that when we went back and watched Twin Peaks, there's stuff about it that's just so dated and off and stuff like that. But then there's so many things it's doing that are so new and so different that James. It's like stunning,
I saw a meme about James, for Twin Peaks. Like, the meme image was like the scene where James is like, I just want to get on my bike and go. And then the person watching Twin Peaks is like, yes, please go. Right. When I complain about Lost, when I complain about like the season, I am comparing Lost. I'm not comparing Lost to anything else. I'm comparing Lost to Lost.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm complaining about.
Yeah. I just think sometimes we need to make that clear. Yes. That, like, even when we're talking negatively about it, we're not, it's like if we were to, for instance, be doing at the same time talking about Lost and Heroes, we'd be talking negative about both, but then if somebody said like, oh, so which one do you like more? Like, it's like, what are you, an idiot? Why are you asking that? Clearly Lost. Like, it's not even in the same class,
Lost season 5 is like a masterclass in storytelling compared to like Heroes.
Compared to the best of Heroes.
Compared to it's like, I loved season 1 of Heroes. Like, that hooked me, and then that went off the rails fast, to the point that, like, if I'm complaining about season 5 of Lost, I'm still watching Lost. Yeah. That tells you the quality of Lost. If I'm watching season 2 of Heroes, I'm going, yep, I'm out. That's the gulf of quality.
Even with this first season of Heroes being good, the first season of Heroes pales compared to, say, season 2 of Lost, like what's considered probably the worst season of Lost.
Yeah.
Like, season 2 of Lost is better than the worst of Lost is better than the best of Heroes.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
And that show was I had such high hopes for that show. That was such a disappointing.
It had a lot of good people attached to it.
it had a lot of good people. Yeah, it had a lot of good actors.
Writers. Like a lot of people from Lost were writing on that show, and then Brian Flohr was a writer on that show.
Damn.
So,
I don't know what happened, but yeah, that's another show that's another show I would consider one of the Lost clones that came out.
Yeah, definitely. It came out before Lost was over, but it was like, it wouldn't have existed if it hadn't been for Lost.
Yeah, it wouldn't have existed if it had been for Lost. It definitely was going for that vibe of being a mystery box show with a high concept.
Yeah.
And a large ensemble. And
the first season was good.
And the first season was good. It succeeded to some degree, but then it just like
Flash Forward, none of it was good.
yeah, Flash Forward wasn't entertaining for none of it. At least Heroes had like one decent season before like the train went off the rails.
There were a few of those like Lost copycats that were actually pretty decent. Jericho was really good. Was it Jericho? No, was it? I think it was Jericho.
I've never seen
Skeet Ulrich in it.
Okay. I never even watched that one.
Yeah, I'm getting it confused. There was another post-apocalyptic show called Jeremiah, and I'm getting them confused sometimes. No, it was Jericho. Jericho is a really good, that's on Netflix. It's a show, it's a post-apocalyptic show, but like with a big mystery kind of component to it. So it's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that you can see the imprint of Lost. A lot of it bad, but that's not Lost's fault. That's just the fault of the people trying to cash in on it and not having anything to do with it. But I also don't think like, and right now some people might say this would be a positive, but I don't think like even Game of Thrones would have been greenlit if it wasn't for Lost. Like that's Game of Thrones obviously predates Lost as far as like the story being written and stuff.
Oh yeah.
But so I'm not saying that Game of Thrones wouldn't have existed in any concept of that. Obviously not.
Obviously not. There were, like George had said, Hollywood has pitched him like multiple times on an adaptation and he's mostly turned them down. He said when Dan and David pitched him is like that was the pitch that he decided to accept.
Yeah, I don't think we would have gotten a good budget fantasy show if Lost hadn't been successful. Like I think that opened up the path for a lot of stuff that wouldn't have had it open before.
Right.
And in turn, Game of Thrones opened the path for a lot of other stuff, It's all like a big chain.
Well, success builds on success, right?
Yeah. Like Lost wouldn't have gotten greenlit if it wasn't for like the X-Files probably,
That's true. I don't know. Lost got greenlit because
it got greenlit because the guy knew his job was pretty much over.
Yeah. Because the head of ABC, for whatever dumb reason, really wanted to put a show on the schedule about castaways stranded on an island. Lost became what it was because Damon Lindelof took that basic concept and fleshed it out into something that was not intended by the people who greenlit the concept.
And the guy who ended up actually greenlighting the show did so because, with a huge budget at the time for that series and everything, because like he was basically losing his job anyways.
Right.
And he basically said, well, fuck it. If I'm losing my job, I'm going to let this kind of show that I've always wanted to see happen, but never could because a network would never fund it. And I'm going to like make it happen.
Also, J.J. Abrams was attached. Even back then, J.J. Abrams had some pull, had some cachet as a producer. Yeah. So, J.J. Abrams, having his name attached certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah, definitely. That's the creation of Lost is a whole interesting story. It's fascinating. If you haven't, it's something worth looking into, finding some of the supplemental materials. Some of them were on the DVDs. Some of them were in the commentaries. There's articles written about it. There's interviews and stuff. There's a lot of fascinating stuff going back to like why certain people were cast and how quickly it was put together too. Like that's something I think a lot of people didn't realize is Lost came together very quickly. Like it was made in a very short period of time. Like the pilot,
Yeah.
They had very little time, and so Damon Lindelof and J.J. Abrams basically locked themselves into a room together, and that was their life for like a couple weeks or something, I think, when they were working on that show. And that's basically all they did. So it's a fascinating story how that got going. But back on topic with season 5 and stuff, I think the general impression we have here is that there are flaws in it, but as we keep trying to reiterate and stuff, it's like a flawed Lost is way better than the top form for most other shows.
Right. Like I said, like I said, what I'm doing here on this podcast is I'm talking about Lost. So I'm comparing Lost to Lost. I'm talking one of the thing my thing in this rewatch is I'm rewatching it and I'm giving my feelings as I rewatch it, and I'm comparing Lost to Lost because that is what I am watching. So I'm not talking about season 5 is terrible compared to like everything else that was on TV at the time. Like it certainly could have been, but Lost never gets that bad. Like,
Yeah.
people can argue with season 6 maybe, but I mean, I'll see how I feel about that when I get there. But other than that, no, season 5 is like still great TV.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's still really fun to watch. I am blown away every night when I write a tweet. I write a tweet for every episode after I watch it. And I think I wrote yesterday's. I can't remember what it was. It was like, I always start with night and then basically it's the episode number of the rewatch, you know? And when I'm writing like night 105, you know, I'm kind of like taken aback. Like, really? Like, it feels like I'm on like night 30, you know?
Yeah.
I can't believe we're like 100 plus episodes into this.
I just want to reiterate, I don't hate this season. The only season I lost so far that I truly dislike is season 2, because I just felt that season was kind of boring and meandering. And it wasn't like the best of Lost. Like, and I know like it's weird because people talk about like, oh, like I see a lot of like those first 3 seasons were great and then the show got terrible. I'm like, season 2 wasn't that good. Like you could take season 1 and season 3. Sure. Excellent. Season 2, I don't know. Like in season 4, like if you're discounting season 4, then you know nothing about the show. Shut up. Season 4 is like you're talking about
no right to opinions.
you're talking. You know, if you think like it gets bad after season 3, then you're discounting the season with the best episode of the series.
Yeah, and some of the best arcs, and you know, not just the best episode of the series, but like several of some of the best episodes.
Yeah, several of some of the best episodes.
Probably like maybe half of a top 10 list.
Yeah, so I don't know how anybody can cut off at season 3 and say the show gets terrible. Like I can forgive you if you said after season 4 you were not interested, but season 4 is like the pinnacle of the series. Like it's so good. Like,
yeah, I think anybody who didn't like the series from beginning to end is crazy. Because I understand, like, there's points of disappointment and there's points in which, you know, one season is past was the best season and it doesn't live up to that after it. But it's still like, I mean, that's at a certain point, it's like somebody offers you, you know, a candy bar and you're like, yeah, this candy isn't as good as the candy I had yesterday. It's like, fuck you, buddy. You know, like at a certain point, you're still eating candy.
But man, season 2, it does some good things, but it's such a slog.
Yeah. Definitely. There's some cool stuff. Season 2, I think for me, the thing I liked the most was like the aesthetics of the season.
Right.
All the kind of the Dharma Hatch stuff. Not the storyline necessarily in the Dharma Hatch, but like the aesthetics of the Dharma Hatch.
You know what? I actually grew to hate the aesthetics of Dharma Hatch because we spend so much damn time in it. I was like, I got kind of sick of it towards the end.
See, I loved all that stuff. I love like pneumatic tubes and all that stuff. Like that kind of like old analog tech stuff is like fascinating to me. So.
Right. Yeah. I get where you're coming from. But no, I mean, I don't have those sort of same feelings for season 5. I enjoyed season 5. I think even if it was flawed, it was highly enjoyable. They were doing some cool stuff, and it was like there was like a lot of fun things that happened. It was fun seeing the characters be like put back in time and to see them recontextualized with like Sawyer being like the new leader and being kind of self-assured and comfortable, and Jack kind of being like out of place and uncomfortable and not really like, you know, like Jack just like coming back to the island and being like, this isn't what I came back for. And then just kind of like, you know, being like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to like hang back and like, I don't know, be like, come to Jesus, Jack, as you said.
And Hurley throwing Hot Pockets at Ben.
And Hurley throwing Hot Pockets at Ben. And like, yeah, it's just,
Spaid, let's not forget Spaid.
Yeah, Spaid.
Espionage suits him.
Yeah, espionage does suit Said, to be honest. Yeah, like, Said should be James Bond. But yeah, no, it's a fun season. It's just not the best. It's just not the greatest season of the show. It's just highly flawed. That's my opinion.
Yeah. See, I'd dispute the highly part, but I'd agree that it's flawed and there's some issues with it. But in general, I think I'm coming off this rewatch a bit more positive than you are, but we're both coming off positive in general.
Well, yeah, there's a lot that I liked. okay? There's a lot that I liked, and I did enjoy the season. Like, I had a lot of fun with it. I'm just not going to roast in it and say, like, everything worked when it didn't.
Yeah. We reserved that. You reserved that for N64 games.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking Chameleon Twist, man. That's the game of the century.
But that's the end of our discussion of Lost Season 5. We're going to be talking about Lost Season 6 in 2 weeks, and that'll be the end of our rewatch. And we're really not sure what we're going to do after that, so we'll figure something out.
We're going to end the podcast.
But what we have left to do at the end of this podcast, talk about what's coming up in the couple weeks ahead. So today is Monday, May 11th. The Third Day miniseries came to HBO. Border Town to Netflix. Tomorrow, Tuesday, May 12th, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Kimmy versus the Reverend, an interactive special, kind of like a Black Mirror Bandersnatch thing. That comes out tomorrow, and we're going to be discussing that next week. So next week's podcast, between seasons of Lost discussion, we're going to be discussing that interactive Kimmy Schmidt episode. So check that out. I'm excited about it. I think comedy suits that format better than drama.
I think so.
So it'll be interesting to see how that all comes together.
Because I think like one of the best moments in Bandersnatch was like the comedy moment.
Yeah, when you could like choose to fight or whatever, and then
to fight the therapist or whatever.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, definitely. I think comedy suits that format more, especially like kind of meta comedy. Really suits that format. So it'll be cool to see this. This is, I think, the most interesting project for that. They've done like a bunch of these. Like the only one anybody really thinks about is the Bandersnatch, the Black Mirror episode. But they did like a Guy versus Nature one or whatever with Bear Grylls, and they did like some kids ones. So they've done like a bunch of different ones like that. So I'm really excited about this. I wish they do like an interactive American Vandal. I think that would be funny. But now it would have to be like interactive Tiger King or something. It'd be weird. So then on Thursday, May 14th, National Theater at Home Barbershop Chronicle starts on YouTube through National Theater's channel. On Friday, May 15th, The Great comes to Hulu. That show looks really good. It's about like a Russian czar, basically. I think it's Catherine the Great is what it's about, and her husband, and kind of this whole it's like a weird period piece with comedic elements to it. Also, Furry Files comes to Disney Plus, which, because it's Disney Plus, I'm imagining it's not going to have what we think of when we think of Furry Files. When I hear the term furry, I think of something very different than what would be on Disney Plus.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully Disney Plus hasn't lost their goddamn minds. Also, Chichipatos comes to Netflix, Inhuman Resources to Netflix, and White Lines returns to Netflix. On Saturday, May 16th, The Queen and the Conquistador comes to Netflix. On Sunday, May 17th, Hightown comes to Starz, and Snowpiercer finally makes its way to TNT. That show has been like basically saying it's coming out for like the last 2 years. I haven't even watched the movie, which is supposed to be pretty good. I need to check that out. So that's, I'm going to recommend the movie over the series because the series had a lot of showrunner changes behind the scenes that make me kind of doubt it's going to be that good. Then on Tuesday, May 19th, if you're enjoying the Arrowverse, we got one more show for you. Stargirl comes to the CW because, they have to have at least 20 Arrowverse shows on at a time now, right?
It's just the Arrowverse network now. It's just, I don't know why they have DC Universe when, like, that should be the CW's new name.
Yeah, it's a DCW.
DCW, yeah. Like, Arrowverse took over that network for the most part.
Yeah, but on Wednesday, May 20th, the 100 returns on the CW, so that's one non-Arrowverse show. But I imagine this season they're going to make a connection.
Yeah, they're going
to be the future of the Arrowverse.
Yeah, they're going to connect it to Arrowverse now.
On that same day, At Home with Amy Sedaris comes to True TV. That's like a spoof of like a Martha Stewart type show. On Thursday, May 21st, Burden of Truth comes to the CW. We'll have to see how that connects to the Arrowverse. The Split comes to Sundance, and the miniseries Penance comes to Sundance now. On Friday, May 22nd, Marvel's Future Avengers, an animated series, comes to Disney Plus. Homecoming to Amazon Prime returns, so that's the second season. Did you ever watch Homecoming?
Homecoming, what was that about?
It's like it's based on a podcast. It's about like soldiers returning. It was directed, all the episodes were directed by Sam Esmail.
Okay, no, I never watched that.
So the first one's really interesting, I think largely because of the direction. The second season, Sam Esmail's like not as involved with. I think he's still producing, but he's not directing, so it already looks less interesting. Control Z comes to Netflix that night as well, as does is Trailer Park Boys, the animated series, returns for its second season. Then on Sunday, May 24th, Betal, I believe that's how it's pronounced, comes to Netflix. And on Monday, May 25th, Barkskins, the miniseries, comes to National Geographic, which is doing original scripted content for some reason now. That's just it's weird which networks have gotten involved in that, you know?
Yeah, it's weird.
National Geographic and True TV both have like multiple scripted shows. It's like, what?
That's bizarre.
And the History Channel.
Yeah, well, the History Channel hasn't been the History Channel in a long time.
the Alien Autopsy Channel.
like at work. So at work, well, when I was not working from home before this started, they had the TV in the break room, and they always had to tune to the History Channel. At a given time when I would go in there, it would either be Ancient Aliens
or like Sasquatch.
No, it would either be Ancient Aliens or American Pickers or like Pawn Stars. It's like nothing else airs on that freaking station.
It used to be all like Nazi documentaries.
Yeah, also, yeah. now it's like Pawn Stars and Aliens.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you're not getting educational content out of that channel anymore. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, like TLC was the learning channel, and now it's like got the trashiest reality shows you've ever heard of.
Oh, I know. I went from the learning channel to like the trash channel.
As I mentioned, next week we're going to be talking about the Kimmy Schmidt interactive special. Check that out. It comes out tomorrow on Netflix. It's going to be exciting. We're gonna watch and get through as many of the endings and paths as we can get through, and then talk about as much of it as we can. So it'll be fun to kind of go over. So yeah, check that out. Remember, it's probably going to take a while to get through all the different paths. So if you really want to watch it and listen to the podcast with us, set aside more than like an hour or something. It's going to take longer than that. But until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to this podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best in genre.